Happy last lesson of the year in Algebra 1, except that's actually kind of sad. But it is a super fun, exciting lesson with lots of information from the past coming back to help you. So it's pretty exciting. Okay, so Um, and then also, if you guys are sad during the summer because you have no math, you can always go back to all the recorded lessons and refresh your skills and just have some fun doing some more math. So there you go. All right, so what we're looking at for this last week here is multiplying and dividing rational expressions. So last week, remember, we simplified rational expressions. This week, we're multiplying and dividing them. So you need to, again, make sure that you're remembering your exponent rules because you're going to be using some of this. So we're going to do a quick review with your exponent rules. So if we have number 1 here, if we were to multiply across, this would give us 15x to the 6th, y to the 8th, over 30x to the 3rd, y to the 2nd. And you want to remember here what we talked about last week. The numbers, right, the coefficients are just like normal fractions. So you just simplify it, okay? And then x to the 6th over x to the 3rd, we talked about this last week. You need to subtract your exponents and you put your answer where your larger exponent is. So 6 minus 3 is x to the 3rd on the top. Y to the 8th over y to the 2nd would be y to the 6th on the top. Okay, so we get x to the 3rd, y to the 6th over 2. And that 1 there, you can have it, you cannot have it, it doesn't really matter. For number 2, again, you can do the same thing and multiply across and then simplify. Sometimes I like to simplify before I start multiplying. So remember, anything in the numerator could simplify with anything in the denominator. So I'm just going to make my numbers a little bit smaller because I know that 3 goes into 15 5 times. I know that 4 goes into 8 2 times. So I'm just going to do that first with my numbers and then I'll multiply to get 2x to the 5th, because remember when we're multiplying we add our exponents, y, and then 5x y to the 7th, because again you want to add your exponents when you're multiplying. So the 2 over 5 doesn't simplify. X to the 5th over x to the 1st, we subtract to get x to the 4th. Y to the 7th over y to the 1st, again, you can always do the larger exponent minus the smaller to get y to the 6th, and then you put your answer, your positive answer, where the larger exponent is. You could also always do the numerator minus the denominator to get a negative 6, and then y to the negative 6 would then have to move to the bottom to make it positive. Okay, so just a little refresher on exponent rules. So now when you're multiplying rational expressions, you're going to be using some of this, and then here's the strategy that we're going to look for. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to factor the numerator and the denominator of both of the fractions. Okay, the next thing that you want to do is you want to cancel out common factors from the numerator and the denominator. And then the last thing is that you're going to write the remaining numerator and denominator factors as a fraction. Okay, so what that means here, like for number 4, the first thing we would do is factor this. So on the top, I'm going to take out an x to make it x minus 2. On the bottom here, I'm going to do just a normal trinomial. So what multiplies to a positive 4 and adds to a negative 4 would be a negative 2 times a negative 2. Okay, so these are simplified. Over here, I'm going to take out an x to get x plus 3. And on the top here, I can't take out a GCF, and I have this coefficient, so it looks like it's going to be a tricky trinomial. So what multiplies to 6 and adds to 7, okay, would be 6 times 1. And again, I'm going to have to do a tricky trinomial. So 2x squared plus 6x plus 1x plus 3. And I'm going to group it to get 2x, x plus 3, take out a 1 to get x plus 3. So I have 2x plus 1 and then x plus 3. Okay, so this whole thing becomes 2x plus 1, x plus 3. Isn't this fun? Factoring still involved here, okay? So now this is fun too because you have all this stuff and you're going to get to start crossing things off. So you're going to like hi-ya some things here, okay? So anything that is the same in the numerator and the denominator, the same factor, and you can only cancel out pairs, right? So I can't do like x minus 2, x minus 2, x minus 2. I can't just cancel all three of those out, okay? So you can only do pairs. So I can get rid of x plus 3, x plus 3. I can get rid of this x and this x. So again, anything in the numerator with anything in the denominator, even if they're in different fractions. And then everything else I have to keep here. So I'm just left with 2x plus 1 on the top over x minus 2 on the bottom. That is so fun. You took that whole thing and you made it into this nice, beautiful answer. Okay, I'm sure you guys enjoyed that. All right, so let's try another one. So again, we still get to continue with our factoring here. So hopefully we're all factoring experts by now. So this is an easy trinomial. What multiplies to -3 and adds to 2? So a positive 3 and a negative 1. X plus 2 doesn't do anything. I am going to put parentheses around it just to help myself remember that x plus 2 is a binomial. It's together. So I can't just like take out, you know, part of it. Over here I have a GCF and dots. Hooray, hooray. Okay. So now I'm going to cancel out any common factors. Okay, x minus 1 with the x minus 1, x plus 2 with the x plus 2, and then you have x, x plus 3, and x plus 1 left. Okay, so I'm just going to write that as x, x plus 3, all over x plus 1. Okay, make sure you're not trying to take this x out with this x on the bottom, right? Because again, this is a binomial, so it's connected, whereas this is just a monomial. You can't just take an x out of that. All right. So continuing on here for number 6. Okay. First thing that you would probably want to do is if you notice you have like an x minus 3 down here and you have a 3 minus x up top. So we're going to do what we talked about by taking out that -1 so that we can make it a positive x minus 3. Okay, because again, if we multiply this back in, we'd get this negative x and we'd get this positive 3 here. Okay, so we don't have anything else we can factor. Okay, so we can start canceling things. So our x minus 3, our x minus 3 can cancel out. And then we have 2 monomials, right? But we can do what we talked about in the beginning, go back to your exponent rules. So I'm just going to simplify this first. So I have this -1, so this is a -18 x to the 5th y. And then on the bottom, I have 10x squared y to the 4th left. Okay, so my coefficients, I'm just going to simplify to -9/5. Then we have x to the 5th over x to the 2nd. So we subtract, right, with our exponent rules to get x to the 3rd. Then we have y to the 1st over y to the 4th. So again, the trick would be take the larger exponent, subtract the smaller, and put that positive answer where your larger exponent was. Okay? All right, number 7, I'm going to put this, like I'm going to make this into a fraction. So I know this is my numerator, the 1 is my denominator. And then on top, I'm going to take out a 2 to get x squared minus 1. Oh boy. Then we get to do dots. Okay. You guys are going to miss this in the summer. This is fun stuff. Okay, so now a normal trinomial on the bottom. So -7 and adds to -6. So a -7 and a +1. Okay, and then again, another easy trinomial here. So multiplies to 21, adds to negative 10. So a negative 3 and a negative 7. All right, so now we're just going to go through and simplify things. So we have an x plus 1, an x plus 1. We have an x minus 7, and x minus 7. And that would be the only thing we have. Okay, so we're left with the 2, and then we have x plus 1, x minus 3, all over 1. Okay, and you can put it all over 1, or you don't have to. You can just leave it like that. All right. Number 8. Okay, so first we're going to factor the top here. So easy trinomial, what multiplies to negative 12 and adds to 4. So that would be a positive 6 and a negative 2. Okay, on the bottom here, looks like we have a GCF of x squared. So then we have x squared plus 9x plus 18 left over. And what multiplies to 18 and adds to 9 would be x plus 3, x plus 6. Okay, and then again, I'm going to put this over 1. So now we can start simplifying. So x plus 6 cancels out. We have an x squared, can cancel out with our x squared here. Again, because this is not connected by addition to the 6, that's why you can just divide an x squared out of it, okay? If it was like 6 plus x squared, then you couldn't do that. All right, so we have on the top, we have this 6 here, and then we have x minus 2. On the bottom, we just have x plus 3. Okay, and usually the mistakes people make, I might even make them throughout the notes here at some point, is that like you're doing this all right, but then when you go to put it together, you forget something. So like you forget the 6 or something like that. So you always just kind of want to double check what you have left and make sure all of that ends up in your answer here. All right, number 9. So we're going to factor again. So we're going to take out a 5 and get x minus 4. On the bottom, take out a 5 to get x plus 3. Take out a 2 to get x plus 3. And we can't do anything to that one. Okay, so now we are going to cross out our x plus 3, x minus 4, x minus 4. Oh, this is a good one. 5, 5. So all we're left with is this nice little 2. Okay, so your answer is just 2. All right. So that was the first thing. Okay, so that was multiplying. Then we are going to get into dividing. Okay, so again, just a review when we were doing this with exponents. When you divide a fraction, right, it's really the same as multiplying. You're just doing your keep, change, flip. So you're really multiplying by the reciprocal. Okay, so remember, we keep the first fraction, we change it to multiplication, and then we flip the second fraction. Okay, so really it's the same thing as multiplying once we do that. So now we're just going to simplify here. So I know 5 goes into itself once, goes into 25 5 times. 3 goes into itself once, goes into 6 twice. And then I can cancel out an x and an x. So I'm just going to be left with 5 and then 2x on the bottom here. Okay, and the next one here, 4xy cubed, right? Keep, change, flip, and I can multiply across to get 24. I'm going to cancel out my x's. Okay, so 24y to the third over 5. All right, and it looks like I'm about to run out of time, which means we get to do a second video. Very exciting. All right, so we're going to stop here, and then you can keep watching the second video for the rest of the notes.